Hello and welcome to Heroic Media. I'm Michelle Bauman.
And I'm Patrick Cordova.
This week on Heroic Media, a federal judge suspends the death penalty in Ohio as courts examine the use of lethal drugs.
Archbishop Samuel Aquila of Denver talks with us about the most recent pastoral letter of the family.
And a nonprofit organization enlists retired Marines to save young victims of sex trafficking.
Stay tuned for all these stories and more here on Heroic Media. So here at Heroic Media, we explore news headlines that deal with very foundational moral issues. A lot of stories we cover are about family and marriage and life.
Exactly, and we look at those issues because they're so foundational, so fundamental.
Exactly.
And they tend to revolve around topics like abortion, euthanasia, embryonic stem cell research, human cloning, and homosexual marriage.
Exactly. So what's our first story?
Thanks, Patrick. First up for the day. A botched execution in Ohio has led a federal judge to halt the use of the death penalty for the remainder of the year. It is also raising renewed questions about the use of the death penalty at all. Interesting.
I think this is one of those topics that's really confusing. There's a lot of confusion about, and I think it's confusing in and of itself. It's one of those areas that just crosses so many different boundaries and teachings and things. Especially for Christians, it can be confusing because there's instances in the Bible, I think, where there's, killing that takes place, and people get confused about what's right, what's wrong, like, is it okay, is it not okay? So, I guess where would you like to start on this whole subject?
Well, first, let's just explain a little bit about what happened in this story. So
Yes.
we have a man named Dennis McGuire. He's an inmate, and
Yes.
Ohio was actually using a backup drug combination
Right.
for the death penalty in this instance because the supplier of their preferred drug, they couldn't find a supplier of their
Yep.
preferred drug. But it took nearly half an hour for him to die, and he was seen sitting up, choking, gasping for air, that kind of thing. And so viewers said that it looked like excruciatingly painful. It took a record-breaking amount of time to kill him.
Right.
And so people are just saying, this isn't humane, this is not okay. And so the judge said, well, we're going to put a halt on this in Ohio.
Exactly.
Until we can look into this drug and investigate it and see if this is a good idea or not.
Exactly. And the accounts of the whole scenario just sounded horrible. Obviously, if you're going to put somebody to death, you would want to do it as quickly and as painlessly as possible. And so the medications and things that they administer to these people under normal circumstances, it's like one medication, and as I understand it, in this situation there was like two that they mixed together because they couldn't find it, like you said. And so apparently it didn't work out like it was supposed to, and it was just so much pain. It sounded awful.
Absolutely.
And I think just any person, whether you're Christian or not, you can side with the fact that this should never happen, regardless of the scenario.
Right, and this has actually happened 2 other times that I'm aware of just this year alone, once in Oklahoma and once in Arizona. So this is at least the 3rd time just in 2014 that this has happened. So we're seeing more and more of these botched executions, and we need to, I think, examine this and look at it. And so this is a good time to look at church teaching on it and to see what the church actually says.
Exactly, yep. And I guess a good place to start is with the Catechism of the Catholic Church, right? So paragraph 2267 says, assuming that the guilty party's identity and responsibility have been fully determined, the traditional teaching of the Church does not exclude resources to the death penalty, if this is the only possible way of effectively defending human lives against an unjust aggressor. So essentially what the teaching of the Church is that the death penalty is permitted in certain circumstances, but of course that's it if there's no other way to stop this person or anything. So largely in our society today, it's not applicable.
Exactly, and I think that's an important distinction to make because so many of the subjects that we cover, there's a very clear black and white, it's very definitive. Abortion is always wrong. It's never permitted under any circumstances.
You're killing innocent human life.
Exactly, and in this case, this is different. There are some circumstances where it's okay and some circumstances where it's not. And so basically the church is recognizing that the legitimate authority of the state has both a right and a duty to protect the people and the common good. And so if there is someone who's going around killing people and there's just no other way to stop this person, then it's acceptable. But like you said, if we look at, maybe they're in a third world country where they don't have a very good penal system and the jails are not very good, that would be one situation. If we look at 21st century America, that's a different situation.
Exactly.
And Pope John Paul II, Saint John Paul II, in Evangelium Vitae discussed this very topic in 1995, and he talked about exactly what church teaching says, that it's permissible when absolutely necessary.
Yes.
And then he said, today, however, as a result of steady improvements in the organization of the penal system, such cases are very rare, if not practically non-existent. And so that's basically what it comes down to, is really looking at the situation and saying, is it really necessary? Could we have put this person in prison for the rest of their lives? Is there some other way to stop this person from killing?
Exactly. And in addition to stopping this person, part of that punishment or that prison sentence is a great opportunity for them, while they're living out the rest of their life, to correct the problem. And also, obviously, the mission of the church is to save as many souls as possible.
Absolutely.
And so even people that have done these heinous crimes, who have murdered people and done these horrible things, they too can be saved, right? Through the forgiveness of sins. Like, that's what Jesus came to do, is to save us. And so we as Christians have a duty and a ministry. Even Jesus said, go visit those who are in prison and everything. So I think that we're robbing them by putting them to death in a society where, in a structure that we have, where we don't have to put them to death. We're not only, we're violating those rules, but we're also we're not giving them an ample opportunity to convert and to know Christ and to be reconciled.
Absolutely. And I think it's good to know in this case, this man, actually McGuire, he did convert. He returned to the sacrament of reconciliation. He started going to the weekly prison mass, received spiritual direction and last rites, and that is a powerful opportunity. And so it's one other thing that you noted really quick, where you said from the Catechism that once the guilt and responsibility of the individual has been determined, that's also something that a lot of people don't recognize. But in the last 40 years, there have been about 140 people who were exonerated after receiving the death sentence. 140.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So this is a big, if you're potentially killing an innocent person, there should be a big, you just have to recognize the gravity of what you're doing. This is not something we can take lightly. Absolutely.
All right, coming up after the break, we'll hear from Archbishop Samuel Aquila.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to Heroic Media. In case you're just joining us, I'm Michelle Bauman.
And I'm Patrick Cordova.
In our next story, in a recent pastoral letter, Archbishop Samuel Aquila of Denver said that the church should focus on sharing the joy of a faithful Christian family life. I actually had the opportunity to sit down and talk with Archbishop Aquila about his recent pastoral letter. Excellent. So let's take a look at what he had to say.
All right.
I'm here today with Archbishop Samuel Aquila of Denver. Your Excellency, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend a few minutes with us here at Heroic Media.
You're welcome, Michelle. It's great to be here with you.
Archbishop, this summer you wrote a pastoral letter entitled, "Family, Become What You Are." With all of the important pressing issues in the United States right now, why did you decide to focus on the subject of the family?
I decided to focus on the subject of the family because it is a topic that is being discussed both within the church and within civil society today. First of all, within the church, there is going to be the Extraordinary Synod on the Family come October, and that will be in Rome. And then there will be the Worldwide Gathering of Families in Philadelphia in September of 2015. And then in October of 2015 will be the Ordinary Synod. And so I wanted to really help people to understand the meaning of marriage, the meaning of family life from the church perspective. And then also civilly, there is the discussion taking place within society about marriage and the meaning of marriage, especially with same-sex unions and the promotion of same-sex, quote-unquote, marriage, and people not really understanding what is the true meaning of marriage, and how do we help people to understand that.
Right. What do you see right now as being the biggest challenges to the family in the United States, and do you see any signs of hope?
I think the biggest challenges are really the way that society sees and understands human sexual intimacy and the relation between a man and a woman. The society has really removed human sexuality and the meaning of sexual intimacy from procreation and the gift of children. And certainly within the church, we have always understood the three goods of marriage. First of all, there is the good of a lifelong commitment in which a person commits to the bond of marriage for all of their lives. Secondly is the commitment of fidelity and faithfulness to that bond and to the other person, that it is an exclusive relationship. And then thirdly, and the real gem, is that the gift of children is where the two truly become one flesh. And that can only happen between a man and a woman. It is recognizing that a man's body is made for a woman and a woman's body is made for a man. And that the only way that children truly come about, and the only way that you can really have the fulfillment of two becoming one flesh, is in the conjugal union of husband and wife. And so we see that that is the teaching from the very beginning, that in the creation of Adam and Eve, the great gift that they received was the gift of procreation. In the blessing, God blessed man and woman with the gift of fertility. And we are told he blessed them and told them to be fruitful and multiply and to go into the world. And so with that, we have to help people to understand that. Oftentimes when I preach on marriage, I will mention the three goods of marriage, and people tell me, we've never heard of those before. Wow. And they may have been married, 20, 25 years, 30 years. And we really need to help people see the truth and the good of marriage and family life. Plus, the family is a basic cell of society. It is the community on which society is truly based, and where children really begin to experience community life and to know and to receive love.
Absolutely. Now, you wrote in your pastoral letter that we as a church must show the world the joy of living a faithful Christian family life. Can you elaborate on the role of joy in our witness to the gospel, and especially with family and marriage?
I think that we have to be convinced of the promises of Jesus, and in that personal encounter with Jesus. Jesus teaches us that he tells us everything in the gospel so that his joy may be in us and our joy may be complete. And so the place where people find true happiness is in that following of Jesus. And in marriage, it's really embracing the truth of marriage as God has seen it from the very beginning. When the Pharisees and scribes raised the question of, why did Moses allow divorce? Jesus was very honest and spoke very directly that the reason was because of the hardness of the heart of the people. But from the very beginning, it was not that way. And so Jesus calls us back to that beginning, back to the original meaning of marriage, and that is where the joy is. And it's not to say that there are very many challenges. It is not to say that there will be times where people will struggle in their relationship with each other as husband and wife. But the important thing is always to put Jesus first and to keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. And joy comes from that. And that's where my greatest hope is. When I see young people today who are deeply committed to the vision of Catholic marriage and see the joy within them, and plus the joy that they have in having large families, whether it be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 children, there's a joy about them that nobody can ever take away.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier that we have coming up the synod, both this year and next year, of the bishops will be focusing on family, and then the World Meeting of Families in Philadelphia next year. Does that give you hope? There seems to be a renewed focus and some attention turned towards that at the same time that we have some of these court cases and things attacking marriage. Do you find hope in these upcoming events?
Certainly, I see them as being hopeful in getting the truth out about marriage and really helping people to embrace the truth. I think that oftentimes we have been somewhat lukewarm within the church in presenting the truth on marriage. Whether it be in the area of natural family planning or whether it be in the area of marriage itself, of really helping people to understand how living the teaching of the church on family can bring them great joy and happiness, and how husband and wife can communicate and relate much better together in their relationship and in their marriage by following the teachings of the church. And so it's presenting the positive aspects of the church, and that's what I see the Synod and the meeting in next September on family, and also the Ordinary Synod, that we really need to help people to come to know and to understand the gift of marriage in a positive way, not just the no's, but really emphasizing the positive and the truth.
Certainly, certainly. Now, on a separate note, there was this past spring, there was a radical pro-abortion bill that was introduced in the Colorado legislature, SB 175. And Archbishop, you led the way in calling the faithful to really stand up to oppose this bill, both through their prayer and through taking action, calling their legislators. And the response was absolutely phenomenal. There were, I know, a couple legislators who said they had never received so many phone calls on any issue before, huge gatherings for prayer in a very short period of time. And eventually, a couple people backed off of supporting the bill, and the bill died. It was not passed. What was your reaction to that? Were you surprised, and what do you attribute that turnout to?
I think that part of the turnout was really because I placed my total trust in the Lord on this one and said, Lord, it's up to you. Make this happen. I really believe that it's your will, your desire for it to happen. And I really prayed for the grace of truth, for the grace of fortitude and the gift of fortitude in proclaiming in the public square the truth about this bill and really helping people to come to know the truth about the bill. And the response of the people was great. It was amazing, and certainly I lifted up my heart in gratitude to the Lord after the bill failed. And I think it really communicated to Catholics the real importance of their involvement in the political process, that we must be Catholics first. We cannot put our faith behind us, especially in the moral decision-making of our country, our society, and in the way that we treat people. And the unborn child is the most vulnerable, innocent of all human beings. And so helping people come to understand that, and helping people to take a very pro-life stance in the public square, regardless of the ridicule they will get from people in either party, from the lie of the pro-choice position, which is really a pro-murder position, or the lies that the media put out there in terms of human life not starting at the moment of conception. Your life, my life, and all of our lives started at the moment of conception in our mother's womb. And that life deserves respect and dignity that is God-given and not bestowed by us. And so helping people and motivating people was extremely important, that they become involved in the political process, because a lot of people had given up hope. And I just strongly communicated to people, you're the ones who are going to make the difference. And many of them said they didn't know who their senators were, they didn't know who their representatives were, they had not voted in the last 3 elections because they thought it was hopeless. And that's not good. That's the devil working. That is Satan working. And so it's important for us to take a stance, and people saw, hey, if we take a stance, we can make a difference.
Absolutely. So do you see this as an example of how the Catholic faithful can and really should be involved in public life on these important issues of family and marriage and other things?
Absolutely, because I really think that Catholics on both sides of the aisle, whether they're Republican, whether they're Democrat, whether they're independent, whatever party they belong to, have been more faithful to the party than they have to Jesus Christ. And it is absolutely essential as a Christian that we first be faithful to Jesus Christ and to the church, and that all of our decisions flow from that. One cannot be pro-choice and Catholic and belonging to Christ. And it's essential for us to really help people to understand that and to really come to encounter Jesus and to encounter Christ so that they can live that truth no matter what the cost. And yes, we will be persecuted. Yes, we will be ridiculed. But Jesus told us that would happen to us, and it happened to him in the gospel. We have not taken the beatitude of blessed are you when they persecute you and utter every kind of slander against you because of my name. Rejoice and be glad. And we find it hard to rejoice, and at times it is difficult to rejoice in those circumstances. But at the same time, that is what we are called to do, and we cannot abandon that as Catholics.
Certainly, absolutely. Well, Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your comments.
It's been a pleasure. You're very welcome.
Wow, I really liked what he had to say about political participation. Thought that was really good.
Absolutely, very good comments.
All
We'll
right.
have one more story after the break, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to Heroic Media. In our final story, the sex trafficking of women and children is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. But one organization, Operation Underground Railroad, is seeking to change this, and they're going to save kids, basically, is what they're doing. It's really cool. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen like this type of organization, but I thought what they're doing is really cool.
Absolutely.
Basically, what they've done is they've gathered a whole bunch of people with very unique skill sets, like Navy SEALs and all these like special tactical, very specialized people. And what they're doing is they're saving these kids that are in these horrible sex traffic, sex slavery situations. So we've covered sex trafficking and sex slavery on this show before, and it's really become a huge problem in the world today. Even right here in the U.S., we did the story about Tenancingo, Mexico, right, where a large, very large portion of the sex slavery ring and everything that comes in the U.S. comes from there. Well, this organization is seeking to do something about this, right? And so I thought it was very nice. I watched the video. There's a video on their website, which is www.ourrescue.org, so you can go check it out. And the video is called The Ride to Freedom, and it just kind of goes through one of these scenarios where they went and saved these kids. And what were your thoughts?
I thought it was really interesting. The first thing that struck me was just the name, Underground Railroad.
Yeah.
And the connection there, of course, it's referring to slavery in the U.S. and
Yes.
to the Underground Railroads that would seek to free these slaves. And then they also, when you sign up, it says become an abolitionist. That's
Yeah.
the term they use.
Yeah.
And their marketing materials, they use
I love
pictures
their
of
marketing
Abraham
materials.
Lincoln.
Yeah.
And I just thought that's so interesting because it is boldly proclaiming what this is. It's not saying, oh, this is comparable to slavery. It's saying this is slavery. In the 21st century, this is what slavery looks like, human trafficking, sex trafficking.
It's the new slavery.
And it is. And a 2012 report from the UN said that there are 2 million victims of sex trafficking each year.
Wow.
About 60% are girls. And it's not just in underdeveloped countries. That's the thing that I think really sticks out is that this is happening here in the US. This is happening in every major city. There was just over the summer, the FBI just conducted a really big operation rescuing over 100 children, I think 168 children.
And a large portion were here in Denver, too.
There was Denver, Chicago, LA, Cleveland, Atlanta. This is happening in the United States in our own backyard.
But yeah, it's scary. It's so widespread across the globe, and 2 million people. I mean, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of people, and it's especially sad in these scenarios when there's children, of course, because they're so helpless. And one of the reasons why you might go, well, why? What's the deal with all these kids? How are all these kids getting trapped in this sex slavery? Well, in the video on their website, you'll see that a lot of the issues revolve around family life or the lack thereof. There's just I think this video took place in Haiti, and there was just so many children that were parentless. They didn't have families, and so they're just out on the streets. People go pick them up, steal them, and then they're little kids.
Right.
And I mean, it's horrible what they're saying, that these kids get raped like 30 to 50 times a day, and just unthinkable, unspeakable, just horrible things. And then they sell these kids for like $10,000 to $15,000. So in this particular video, they posed as undercover people that were wanting to buy a couple of sex slaves, and then what they focus on too is they really want to work with the governments of these areas, because they want to do things legally, and they want to make sure that they want to make sure these kids are safe. And so while these situations and scenarios can be pretty scary and high pressure, they want to work with the governments, and these governments do want to work with them too. So it's nice. So they not only save the children, but they put the people behind bars who are doing these horrible things.
Absolutely, I think that's so key. And Pope Francis has really tried to make a focus on this throughout his papacy so far. And he said about human trafficking, in these persons, in a special way, Christians recognize the face of Jesus, who identified with the smallest and the neediest among us. And I think that's really that's very powerful, to say we see the wounded face of Jesus in these people. And he's also called us, the Pope has called us to look at in what ways we exploit people, in what ways we use people, and sort of drawing this connection to things like pornography. And how many times do we tolerate that a human being is considered an object displayed to sell a product or to satisfy immoral desires?
Exactly.
So sort of look at the root causes and the connections and all these different things.
Yep.
I think it's
really what it comes down to. They're all tied together. All right, that's it for this week on Heroic Media. Please join us next week for all the up-to-date news on the pro-life issues that matter to you.
Please feel free to write to us at news@heroicmedia.org.
And please check out our website at heroicmedianews.org, where you can read more stories like the ones we discussed tonight.
That's it for this week. Until next time, keep us in your prayers.
God bless.